بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد قال الله تعالى عز وجل في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. Read Durud Sharif. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. That was the most silent that I've ever heard anyone reply to a salam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm on a mic. It's okay for me. For you guys, see, I've given the salam. It's wajib upon you guys to give the jawab, so it's up to you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. You know, it's always hard being the first speaker at any event. But because I class this as my own event as such, due to my extensive relationship with al-hikma and the brothers and sisters behind this event, I'm more or less a warm-up speaker. I'm not really. The shuyukh are coming. There's, inshallah, Shaykh is already here. Shaykh Riyad Nadwi, he'll be enlightening you, inshallah, very shortly. But there's a funny story I remember. And it may not even be funny for yourselves, but I remember it as a funny story. Because once upon a time, there was this professor, and he was a very, very good professor. He was very good at articulating his particular thoughts on a lot of his views. And he would go around and he would have a chauffeur. And this chauffeur would be with him all the time. So wherever he would go for years and years, 10, 15 years. And obviously, as you start to deliver more seminars, the chauffeur began to become a bit more experienced with the knowledge as to what his professor was talking about. So sometimes it's like, you know, your shaykh goes here and there and you follow him, and after a little while you start quoting hadith and you start quoting Bukhari and, you know, verse 53, chapter 74. So this is what happened, and he became really versed. And at one point he came to his professor and he said, "Professor, can I ask you a question?" He says, "Yes, go ahead." He says, "Can I be you today?" So the professor said, I don't know. So he said, "Look, I've been watching you for the last 10, 15 years. And today's topic, you've done it 15 times before. And I'm confident that they don't know you, they haven't seen you before. I'm confident I can go there and deliver this for you." So the professor said, "Okay." So the professor becomes the chauffeur and the chauffeur becomes the professor. And they go to this event and he goes and he delivers this beautiful, you know, sermon and all these wonderful views, and he absolutely obliterates the actual occasion, and people are overwhelmed. And what happens is, as they're leaving the venue and the professor and the chauffeur are now leaving, a particular person comes up and he says, "Professor, I have a question." And at this point you can imagine the chauffeur, who's now the professor, is sweating, thinking, "Oh my days, what's he going to ask me?" So at this point, they ask him a question, and he is sweating, thinking, "I don't know the answer." So what he does is he turns around and says, "Oh, that." He says, "That's such a simple question. I bet you even my chauffeur knows the answer to that." So literally today, that's what I am. I'm literally the real chauffeur. And inshallah, all I'm going to do is hopefully try and just give a little spice to tonight's event, inshallah, because it is the first of the Islamic Summits, and hopefully prepare the stage so that when Shaykh comes, inshallah, you'll receive him properly. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The topic is about the youth living within the West. And I think, to be really honest with you, we as young people and as parents, as brothers and sisters, as family members to one another, as cousins and relatives, as friends, a lot of us right now are watching each other face a lot of turmoil due to the recession, due to the loss of jobs. And what's really amazing is throughout all this period in your life up till now, we've all had goals. And every goal that we've had, we've always assessed it to be something far greater than maybe something we could even achieve. But it's been a goal. And those goals remain and they continue. And even now in this turmoil, a lot of us have goals and expectations. And what really surprises me is that even though we are suffering and so many of us are out of employment, so many of us don't know what we're doing, we still have all these goals in our minds. A lot of people who have been now made redundant from their posts and their jobs, when you speak to them, it's chaos, absolute chaos, because there aren't enough jobs. So every day when people are surfing on the internet looking for a job, no one's getting one. And if you are, it's half the time that you were doing before. So the money struggle you're having, the issues about paying your mortgages and all the rest of it. And everyone's facing this turmoil. And what surprises me is that even in that, even during and whilst we have all these issues, we've still got enough time to go outside and shop in high street shops, buying wonderful gear. And the brothers, we know the brothers love the gear, so we'll be on the high streets looking at the Armani shops, looking at Hugo Boss, Selfridges, Mailbox, and all the rest of it. And the sisters, hijabs and the shoes, the matching colors, the handbags. We haven't felt the pinch when it comes to these things because the dunya has always been the priority. For every individual, for every single individual, this should have been a time for reflection. When you and I switch that TV on and we watch the Horn of Africa and people are suffering, as young people, it doesn't affect us once we switch the TV off. We don't remember that. For the 3 or 4 minutes that we see an advert or we see a news article, for those few minutes, we feel sorry for them, we feel bad. But the moment that TV is put off or the article is put away, you and I don't remember anything. We take the example of the children of Gaza. Every day you see this on the news. You see everywhere you go, but it doesn't affect you. So that when you're spending your pound, you don't remember them. You think about yourself. And what's really sad is when we are born and brought up upon morals that are not morals. They're not morals. We're born and brought up upon things which have deluded us, which have shaped our minds into something that it shouldn't be. Why is it that you and I, as youngsters, we walk the streets and we see all the time when we walk the streets, there are people who are less fortunate than you and me, living in the same area as you and me. Some living next door to you and me. Some living in the same household as you and me. But there is no effect upon our hearts. Then you ask yourself about your iman. Then what happened to your iman? And what happened to all those ahadith that talk about a believer will not sleep or a believer will not eat whilst his neighbor will stay hungry. What happened to those hadith? I tell you the hadith we remember the ones about celebration. We remember the hadith that suit you and me. And every time an issue or a mas'ala comes up, everyone's a shaykh and an alim. Yesterday I had a discussion with a brother who was talking about 32 ways that you can have a beard. Everyone's a shaykh. Because of globalization, we have become a community that has absolutely deceived ourselves and taken ourselves away from the true deen. If everybody could be a shaykh by going on Google, there's no need to have these conferences. There'd be no need to have this. There'd be no need for masajid. Because everyone would be an imam. Honestly, 32 ways to cut or have your beard. Amazing. And they were quoting websites. So, mashallah, good book. Reference. Great. Do you know the ulama always stated, they always said, whenever we were in madrasa, and I'm very, very young in comparison to the shuyukh that are here. And these shuyukh have had years and years of experience. And they'll tell you themselves, you don't research on the internet. You research the books you have on your shelf. And the saying that I was brought up on is that books are knowledge and knowledge is power. And that's power in whichever way you wish to see that. But power in the sense that it empowers a person, knowledge empowers a person, but not when you're on Google. Because you don't know which poodle's written that on Google. So you don't even know what you're reading. And the moment you start to become a mufti after reading it on Google, and then you come out onto the streets and start to tell everybody number 28 style of trimming your beard, and then you get a slap, that's when you realize that the dunya that we live in is a different place. The youth have empowered themselves because of such. And it's good to some extent, but it's negative to another level. Our youth, I've got to have a look at some of the places where our youth are. Our youth are sitting in young offenders institutes. Our youth are sitting in places where we never dreamt of. Every time we bring a life into this dunya, ask those parents what they wish for their child. Ask those parents. Ask yourself what you wish for your child. When you brought your child to dunya, the dreams that you were having. And the sisters will know this, that when you have your child in your womb and you're walking around for 9 months, the dreams, the aspirations that you have for your child. Because you think, inshallah, one day when this child will grow, I will teach it the best of adab. I will give it the best of education. I will make my child into this and that, a doctor, an alim, a hafiz, a mufti, and the greatest engineer, and so on and so forth. Until your child becomes old enough to speak, and he starts ratting at you and telling you how it is. And you say, Puttar, I've been in dunya longer than you. You know, I've been here longer than you. You're telling me how it is. And they're like, oh, you don't know. Because that's the way the youth speak. It's about, what does mom and dad know? The old fashioned. And we've empowered ourselves so much that we believe that we are the ones that make the right decision for ourselves in everything. What, when you're 15 years old, 13 years old, you think your decision is going to be better for you, above what your parents wish for you? The truth is, society has shown us evil ways, but the reality is, no parent wishes bad for its child, and never has. No parent does that. Every parent wants the best for its child. Parents give whatever they never had for themselves for their children. And these same children grow up, and the moment they have a few extra brain cells, they're out. Chilling on the streets. Mixing with people whom they shouldn't be mixing with. Having unlawful relationships. Smoking drugs. And then taking themselves into young offenders institutes. And believe me, the population is growing in the prison service. We are now nearly more than 14,500 out of an 80,000 population. In fact, 75,000 population. So whilst the numbers are decreasing, we're increasing. So where are we going wrong? Today, if this hall was packed full of those youth, then I would say that we achieved something. But when you and I sit at home and sleep on our comfortable beds with no worry in the world, what are our children doing? What are the youth doing? What are you and I doing? Don't think that Allah will not question you about this tomorrow on the Day of Judgment. Don't think that Allah will not question you about your brothers and your sisters. And I can guarantee every person here will know somebody who's in prison. It may not be your cousin. It may be a relative of a relative. It may be a friend's brother or a cousin. But you know somebody or you've heard of somebody. Because this is the state of our ummah. This is the state of us now. We're so weak and fragile. We cannot even stand up for ourselves. And then you ask, what has this dunya given to you and me? It's given us nothing but misery. You think your money would have given you your happiness. What happiness have you gained from your money? You know, you ask the people that have got all these cars and houses, what have they received? What has dunya given them? More of a headache. You're more answerable to Allah. So when you ask for your wealth, and you say to oh Allah, make me a millionaire or a billionaire, you ask for afiyah. You say, Allah, if you're going to give me wealth, give me contentment with my wealth. Our du'as day and night. You want to be rich. You want to be powerful. You want to be people who are looked up at. Yet, we are not ready to leave the dunya. And when I say dunya, I talk about all the materialistic or the materialism that we see. All of it. And the fitna continues. I had a brother that came in new to the prison service. He's the first timer. So that's a kind of a shock for us when we see first timers. Because most of them have already been in 2-3 times. So this brother's come into the prison service and he's in for domestic violence. And he comes in, and in the morning we've gone to see him. And honestly, it's amazing. I say brother, due to respect of his name. But that's probably as far as it goes. Because when he came in, I saw his name, and I went to question him. If you'd like to come for Salatul Jum'ah, if you'd like a Quran, if he prays Salah, we'll give him a Musalla, whatever else he needs. And he goes to me, brother, I'm not Muslim. So I go, but your name? He says, yeah, that's my mother and father kept that name. So I was, okay, fine. Ticked it off, signed it off, and he's gone. And the imam that was sitting opposite me, he was just looking at me like, what are you doing? You didn't even question him. And then after thinking about the whole scenario, I started to realize how immune I've become to that system. That I've seen so many of these cases, it no longer affects me. That I've seen so many of these guys come in and say, yeah, I'm not Muslim and his name's Muhammad something. I just ticked it off and sent it. Meaning that I've gone past that period now where I'm going to, when I used to question these guys, I've gone beyond that. It's such a normal thing. In the last 7 years, I've seen so many of these people that I didn't even think twice. And he's saying, you should have questioned him. And I explained to him, I said, look, you become immune to the system because you see so much of it. And then you just think, okay, these are all the same. They're never going to change. And if that's how I'm feeling in that system, imagine how they're feeling. Because these guys are coming in all the time. And this guy was a first timer. So the imam went to see him and he saw him and spoke to him and he came around and he said, okay, you know what, I will come for Jum'ah. He came for Jum'ah and it was my Jum'ah. And I spoke to him and I said, what's the difference now? And he says, brother, you know what it is? He says, I'm too sinful. He said, I've sinned so much that I know that Allah will not forgive me. I said, brother, how can you say that? He says, look, I know Allah's Rahman and Rahim, but He's not going to forgive me. Look at the despondency in these people. Where's the hope? What hope have you and I given to our people, to our brothers and sisters? Absolutely nothing. So then I spoke to him for a while. I said, brother, look, there's no sin that cannot be forgiven. We're talking about Allah here. Okay, we're not talking about you and me and a governor or anybody else who forgives. We're talking about Allah. We're talking about Allah. So that hadith came to my mind, the hadith of Tirmidhi, it's a hadith Qudsi. And within it, Allah Azza wa Jal, He talks to mankind and He says to mankind, and it's all about despondency, it's all about His mercy. He says, Ya Ibn Adam, إنك ما دعوتني ورجوتني غفرت لك على ما كان منك ولا أبالي. That, oh children of Adam, as long as you turn to me and you come to me, فإنك ما دعوتني, you call on to me, ورجوتني, and you have hope in me, غفرت لك على ما كان منك, I will forgive you no matter what you were upon. And then he says, ولا أبالي. He says, I won't mind. I don't care about that. That doesn't affect me. And then Allah says, Ya ibn Adam, لو بلغت ذنوبك عنان السماء ثم استغفرتني غفرت لك. That, O children of Adam, even if you came to me and your sins were to reach the clouds within the skies, ثم استغفرتني, and you asked me for forgiveness, غفرت لك, then I would forgive you. And then Allah Azza wa Jal says, Ya ibn Adam, إنك لو أتيتني بقراب الأرض خطايا ثم لقيتني لا تشرك بي شيئا. That, O children of Adam, even if you came to me with an earth full of sin, and the whole of this dunya was full of sin, and you had come to me and you had never done shirk, then لأتيتك بقرابها مغفرة. Then I would come to you with an earth full of pardon. And he just looked at my face and he said, really? And I said, really? I said, they're not my words. And all I saw were beads of tears falling from his eyes. And then I asked myself that question, that tomorrow when I come here, or on Sunday when I come here, what am I going to speak to you about? And I felt that I need to take this off my chest. I need to take this off my shoulders. That this responsibility isn't just mine. This responsibility is yours. They are your brothers and sisters. Go and have a look at this institute, the female institutes. These are your brothers and sisters. These are our youth. And we let our youth go to waste. We let our youth become criminal. We let our youth become convicts. And then we ask ourselves, what's the problem? When you bring your children upon the dunya, when you bring your children up at the age of 3 or 4 or 5, and they're watching all these wonderful programs, sometimes you need to ask yourself what they're watching. I had a doctor come to me, a psychologist, and say to me, you know, I've got patients who are suffering from watching Tom and Jerry. I was like, Tom and Jerry, come on guys, everybody's watched Tom and Jerry, right? But it's violent. You know, for a child, it's violent. You know, when the cat beats the mouse and the mouse beats the cat, they're violent. So he's telling me that he's got patients who have been traumatized from that. And now, as these children are growing up, they've grown up thinking hitting people is a normal thing. It's funny. So when he does go and pick up a mallet and whack it off his mom's head, it's funny. I was shocked. I never heard anything like it before. So he goes to me, yeah, they've been traumatized by Tom and Jerry. So I'm not watching Tom and Jerry again. Right? But I was shocked. I mean, some of the studies that are coming out, it makes you wonder sometimes, really, what kind of dunya do we really live in? Really, what kind of... And his analysis is that the dunya is based upon 2 things. And our youth have 2 things that affect them the most. The first is violence, because violence is something that they're brought up on. Cartoons are violent. Ben 10's violent, right? He beats up monsters and all sorts, becomes a superhero. Most cartoons do that. It's all about violence. And the other is the sexualization of everything else. So even like dolls and all that sort of stuff, everything's sexualized. So he said these are the 2 things that affect our youth the most. Violence and the sexualization of materialistic things. And to be honest with you, I agree with him. And I'm hoping you agree as well. That these are the issues that are facing us. Okay, and we'll do nothing about it. Do we need an alternative? Of course we do. But who's gonna bring that alternative to play? And at the end of the day, I ask myself this question more than I ask anybody else. That if I was bringing my children up in this country, how would I do it? I ask that question all the time. Because the truth is the social pressures, there's a secularizational pressures. All these pressures, they change and shape our minds to different things. And if you want to live a life according to the Quran and the Sunnah, which is probably the hardest thing to do, then you and I need to find an alternative. So after listening to this doctor, I went and I spoke about this to my congregation, and they all laughed at me, just some of you guys were laughing. When I spoke about Tom and Jerry, they were like, he's gone mad. Why is he talking about Tom and Jerry? I'll talk about violence, then you realize how deep violence is rooted within us. Because remember, the brother that came in for the first time, he came in on a domestic. And his issues were deep. So I asked this question to you, that when you're busy doing something else and you leave your children in front of the TV, are you sure you know what they're watching? When you give your children access to the internet, you sure you know what they're surfing? When you give your children that access to their freedom to chill with their friends, are you sure you know who they're hanging around with? I'm not saying become a spy. I'm not saying you need to have a camera on them. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is there needs to be a control. And there needs to be time where you sit down with your child and you have that talk and that conversation and you have that one-on-one with them. And you talk to them openly, because the dunya has changed. The dunya isn't that when he comes in, come on, give you one around the ear, sort you out, go to your room. That doesn't work anymore, does it? Because most of the guys that I see, they talk about this. Look, we never learned anything from our parents, and they blame their parents, and then you speak to their parents, and then they blame their children. So it's just a blame game. We need to get away from the blame and do something about this. Because we've been blaming each other far too long. And this is the trait of this ummah. That we used to live upon the glory of the ummah. We used to talk about people like Salahuddin Ayyubi and Buzz, and think we were big time bad boys. Right? And we still live upon this glory, because everybody you ask talks about joining the army of Imam Mahdi. Yeah, man, I want to be a part of that crew. Don't live off any glory, because it's not going to happen. Let's live on reality. And the truth is, the ummah is so weak and frail right now that the ummah is falling apart. The ummah is in need of strength. And the dunya has taken our youth, chewed them up, swallowed them and spat them out. And they are now beings that are good for nothing. The Prophet ﷺ, and I finish upon this, very beautifully in the hadith of Tirmidhi explains this. And it's a very famous hadith, and I'm sure you've heard it numerous times, when he talks about nations summoning one another to war in the manner that you and I invite one another to the dinner table. So the Prophet ﷺ says, يُشِكُ الْأُمَمُ أَن تَدَاعَ عَلَيْكُمْ كَمَا تَدَاعَ الْآكِلَةُ إِلَىٰ قَصْعَتِهَا. That a time will come when people will call one another to the table for war. Nations will summon one another for war, as a diner will call somebody to the table. And someone from amongst the crowd asks, فَقَالَ قَائِلٌ وَمِنْ قِلَّةٍ نَحْنُ يَوْمَئِذٍ, that, Ya Rasulullah, will we be small in number at that time? And he replies, قَالَ بَلْ أَنْتُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ كَثِيرٌ وَلَكِنَّكُمْ غُثَاءً كَغُثَاءِ السَّيْلِ وَلَيَنْزِعَنَّ اللَّهَ مِنْ صُدُورِ عَدُوِّكُمُ الْمَهَابَةَ مِنْكُمْ وَلَيَقْذِفَنَّ اللَّهَ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ الْوَهَنَ. That, no, you will be vast in number. Vast in number. There will be many of you like there is now. Everywhere you go, the whole of Small Heath is full of Muslims. The whole of Alam Rock, Tarak is full of Muslims. The whole of it. Right? If you see someone that's not... Ladypool Road, Stratford Road, it's all full of Muslims. East London, all full of Muslims. Oldham, we've got a nice patch of Muslims. So we're everywhere. And every country you can think of. And there's so many of us. Yet, you will be like the ghutha. You will be like the rubbish that is carried by flowing current, water. So you'll be that foam and that rubbish that will hit each wall as it continues to flow down the stream. And then he says, Allah will extract the fear for you out of the hearts of the disbelievers. And He will place within your hearts an illness. And they ask, وَمَا الْوَهَنُ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ? What will be that illness, Ya Rasulullah? And he replies, حُبُّ الدُّنْيَا وَكَرَاهِيَةُ الْمَوْتِ. It will be your love for this dunya and your dislike for the akhirah. I'll leave with this as a message for you to ponder upon, as a message for you to take with you when you leave the halls. Because I tell you the truth, after a long event like this, the moment you walk out these doors, you don't remember anything. You won't even remember who spoke. You won't. Believe me. I'll be standing outside to question you if you can remember. But I guarantee you, you will hardly remember anything. So if there is one thing that I'm requesting you to take away this hadith. That this is us, this is the ummah in summary. And this is what he sallallahu alayhi wa sallam prophesied, and this is what we are. It's a reality. We are that ghutha, and we are weak, and we have that illness of the dunya. And that is why we are so weak. That is why our youth don't listen to us. That is why we are in turmoil. So make dua to Allah Azza wa Jal, that first and foremost to give me the tawfiq and yourselves. Say Ameen. The tawfiq and the ability to live and die upon the kalima la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, and to give us the ability to live a steadfast life. To live a steadfast life, a life that will attain the taqwa and the God consciousness that we so want. وأقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروا إنه الغفور الرحيم.